hand holding here on this, talk about rule of thirds. And composition, figured we had somebody here, so I might as well talk about how you can use the rule of thirds in a portrait kind of setting. One thing to think about, if you remember the rule of thirds, is if you take your width and height of your image and divide it into thirds each way, the 4 points of intersection are your third focal points. And those are like the most pleasing. If you look at the golden rule, golden proportions, anything like that, those spots are the best place to put things. Obviously this is a rule that you can break. I think it's good for you to go through and look at now just to see how it works. The problem is, if you look at that, if you look at thirds, one good way to do it is if your camera, and a lot of them do, has some sort of display function to add a grid. Guess what? That grid is broken down into thirds. So as you're shooting, you can see exactly what is going on with your proportions and your rule of thirds. But basically, if you kind of get it in your head as to where those are, you can make little mental notes. You can put little marks on your LED screen if you wanted to, and that would help you out to figure out where those points are. The problem is that with most metering systems, the meter is dead center in the middle, so it's in between all 4 posts. And so what you need to do is hold the shutter halfway down, compose or focus, and then recompose and shoot so that you've got your image in the thirds. What we're going to start with here is if we took a photo of Jessica right here, who's been a trooper sick the entire time we've been shooting, so normally she's much spunkier than this. What we do is, if we look at a photo right from here and took something, it's really pretty flat, really kind of boring. There's a lot of space above her head. She's dead center in the frame. It's not very dramatic. It's not very exciting. But if we just kind of simply kind of work up here and move her down to where a third position would be, we can see that instantly, even though we still have quite a bit of space up above her head, this photo becomes a lot more interesting and a lot more dramatic. We've got the camera light on the back. I'm running kind of a modified 3-light system here. One 45 degrees away from her, camera left. I've got one 45 degrees axis from her, 45 degrees up like the sun, camera right, and then I've got a third light, camera left, shooting at the background. That's where we get that nice dark area in the corners from. So we've got this area here as a third. It's a more dramatic portrait. If I bring it down to where her face or eyes would be in the upper third quadrant there, you can see that we still have that same kind of dramatic thing where we've got the darkened edges and then her lit in the middle. Granted, the lighting isn't perfectly set here. She's got kind of dark eyes, as we can pick up. I might pick it up differently in a camera. One thing to consider, especially if you've got somebody like Jessica with those gorgeous clear eyes, that they are hard to shoot because they don't, give you a whole lot of color in that area, and they go dark really, really fast. So if we look at the lighting situation here and the cropping, it works out fairly well. If you can turn your head that way a little bit more, Jessica. All right. Turning the head again adds even a little bit more drama, especially if we bring it down here. You can see that we've got a nice dramatic portrait. So what we would do is we'd center her, hold the shutter halfway down, right, and then recompose so that her face is in the third, and still holding the shutter, press it the rest of the way down to take that picture. One thing you want to try and avoid, again, you can break this rule if you want, but for this class you should not, is if we put her turned like that in one of the third positions that are either in the left-hand side of the frame, what happens is it's not as dramatic. Well, it's still as dramatic, I guess, but the problem here is that she's looking outside of the frame. So that also brings our attention outside of the frame. We wonder what's going on. That's way more exciting, not inside this photo than inside of it. So if we bring that back here, you can see that with the light and the focus and everything, we're drawn to her, where if we look at it from here, we're drawn away from her. And you want to put your focus on the left-hand side of the frame or even outside of that area. This works the same way as we zoom in, look at portraits. A little bit more towards me, there we go. And from here we have that same kind of thing. If we shoot dead center, we end up with a fairly boring kind of flat photo. We've got a little bit of drama here in the face. We can see that we would need to adjust one of those lights. It's a little dark on our eye. But if we move over into a third position, we can see that we've got something dramatic. She's looking into the frame. With that darker side of the face, we've got a lot of focus on that eye on the left, and you can see that it really stands out. If you can look dead at me for 1 second, Jessica. Well, keep your head turned, but look, focus right at the camera. You can see that we could end up with a little bit of light adjustment here, something really dramatic with the photo, putting this in a third position. If we put it in a third position here, it's just kind of weird, and she's almost like invading our space. It's kind of like the, what were those things called in the 50s? Whoever was here, you remember that?
What?
The little guy with the nose and little hands looking over the wall. Do you remember that? I don't remember that. Maybe I'll find it and post it if I remember it. All right, same thing.
Pod people?
What's that?
Pod people?
No, not pod people. I don't know what it is. But anyway, same thing here. If we put the focus on the bottom third, if we put her eye there or there, it's a little bit awkward where we've got everything cropped off of the frame. So that is not as much fun and not as interesting of a shot. And the cropping just kind of matters what you want to do with the image. You know, if you want to do something a little bit more full body.